Hello and welcome to the Cosmic Prayer. I'm very excited to be here today. My name is Rev.Laura Topper, and I'm here joined by an inspirational super guest who's been on the Cosmic Prayer. And she prompted me and said, I want to come back. And I said, yes, we did arrange for you to come back. And she's back here waiting backstage to come on and to share. I think it was a few months ago, 9 months ago maybe. And so a lot has shifted and changed and transformed. And I'm just so excited to be sharing today with Reverend Molly Cate. And Reverend Molly is an inspiration to all. She leads her spiritual community in a very, well, I would say unusual way, but it's not really an unusual way. It's actually quite a normal way, I think, but it's a refreshing way. And we're going to talk more about this as she comes on to the show. I just want to remind us of Reverend Molly and her power. She is a teacher and a speaker and a writer and a counselor also. She's been a spiritual leader of Unity of the Redwoods in Eureka, I love that, California, since 2015. And she teaches courses and she champions the resilience of humanity, teaching and sharing the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute program. Molly has a master's degree in consciousness studies from the Holmes Institute in Santa Rosa and a master's degree in sociology from the University of California and several certificates in cross-cultural competence. And she's been a member of the Humboldt Interfaith Fellowship since 2017. She has one wonderful website, The Wisdom Bridge, which we will look at later, and also her Unity of the Redwoods.com website, which we will look at also later. And I'm just feeling really blessed, inspired, and grateful to be sharing this space with you today. Reverend Molly, thank you for coming back onto the Cosmic Prayer.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity, Laura. Thank you so much for letting me come back. And it was Valentine's Day, February 14th, that I was quite right.
It was Valentine's Day. And of course you don't come alone. You come with Malcolm behind you.
Yes,
Your wonderful
gorilla.
Yeah, gorilla, that's right.
Yeah.
Malcolm's there kind of keeping an eye on this conversation, and I know that you have an amazing community. You share the teachings of religious science, really new thought. You share the new thought teachings, unity, science of mind. We can kind of define it in different ways, and yet it's one truth, isn't it? That
It is. And it
we're
involves
one and we're love.
teachings. It involves so many different communities of spirit around the world. That's why I love being part of the interfaith community here, because it's so broad. It's just a lovely way to be with people of different faith traditions coming together. It's one of my favorite things about being here.
Yeah, I love that you bring that in right now, because it, for me here in the UK, when I tell people that I teach new thought, I ultimately say, actually, I'm an interfaith interfaith teacher, and I think people can understand that and conceptualize that a
Yeah,
little more here in the UK than if I were to say I teach science of mind.
absolutely.
Um,
The language
yeah.
can be off-putting rather than helpful, depending on who understands what you mean by it. I mean, here, if you say science of mind, people say, does that mean you're Scientology? It's like, no, it definitely does not mean that. But we can get caught up in these old limitations in thinking or misunderstandings. So I like the phrase "new thought, ancient wisdom," because it
Yes.
encapsulates the ongoing wisdom of so many people from the Buddha on out. This is not new thought.
No. This is not new thought. And so what is let's talk about prayer. And I mean, I know you've already been on the Cosmic Prayer and we had an amazing conversation about your idea of prayer. And I'm just wondering, in the past, since Valentine's Day, since you were last here, how you've used prayer for your life, with life. What has changed for you? What has shifted? Have you had any amazing demonstrations through the use of prayer in the last few months?
Yes, indeed. Particularly prayer involving our little community. Unity of the Redwoods is teeny. We're about a dozen folks who've been the stalwarts of this um, this group that's been around for 30 something years is now down to about 12 folks. And we have no physical building. We had given up our rental space just before the pandemic hit. And then since then, of course, we've not been anywhere. So we are kind of floating in a sense. And that gave us opportunities. And one of them was coming through prayer. I asked the community to join me in prayer, knowing that our way forward was there and we just needed to have an awareness, the guidance to find it. And out of that, during our times during the pandemic, as you alluded to before, we've been meeting what do you call it, old new ways on the telephone through freeconferencecall.com, to give them a little plug. They've been marvelous. And it's absolutely free. It's just a remarkable thing. And so we've been meeting that way. And we've actually gained 3 members in the 2.5 years we've been meeting that way, who has never met most of us. They've met me because I've gone out of my way to make sure I could meet them face to face, and they know a little bit about who they're talking to every Sunday on the phone. But the rest of the community, they say, "Oh, hello, Anne. Hello, Stephen." These are people they know by voice. They have never seen them. And it's just remarkable. And they keep coming back and they're loving doing it. So that's been our way forward. And out of that, I asked them to start visualizing what's next for us, what's coming out of this new experience of not being in physical space together. And that's where it came through my email, something most of these folks in the community don't use since they don't own computers, or we would be meeting through Zoom or something. It came to me that Unity was embracing this new movement that's both in the UK and the United States called Fresh Expressions. And that came to me, I believe, because of the community focus through prayer in saying what is next for us. Because Fresh Expressions is a new way forward for any faith tradition that's finding themselves with dwindling people coming out, say on a Sunday morning, if that's when they meet. And how do you deal with the fact that it's harder and harder to do what in the United States is the old Sunday morning thing?
Mm-hmm.
And it's getting people to do that is harder. And so Fresh Expressions, because it's both has a US branch and a UK branch now, is one of the things that Unity has embraced. Unity Worldwide, the parent organization, has embraced. And it came across my desk as an email one day. And I thought, this is answered prayer.
Yeah.
This is what we're going to embrace and learn about so that we can understand a way to be a part of the new thing happening, not just the dwindling old thing that's really eloquently letting us know there's something new that's trying to break through. And so that's what it was. It was incredible. And since then I've been learning about it. So and that's been going on for all these.
It is incredible, and I'm really intrigued around the phone collaborative that you've created, because we all have our phones with us all the time. It's not as if we're having to look for a phone anymore.
Right.
And so for people that don't have a computer or an iPad or a
Yes.
tablet, a phone is something that we have, that we can still get online with, and we can still look on, we can get onto the internet on our phones.
Yep.
So it's not as kind of archaic as it seems to have a phone chat and a phone community. In ways, it might actually be simpler, because somebody could be out walking in the woods or by the sea or just in a cafe and listening to what's going on. So I think it's actually it sounds like an expansive way
But
of being in community.
I agree. It absolutely is. And this too is guided from prayer. I mean, as soon as just before mid-March 2020, when everybody was starting to be asked to shelter in place, and I could see this coming, I have to give a thanks to my dad, who was a physician and always talked about medicine at the dinner table, much as my mother didn't care about for that much of the time. But we grew up talking about not epistemology. That's my field. We grew up talking about the spread of diseases and all that stuff at the dinner table. And so I saw this was going to happen. I was like, okay, so what are we going to do here I am with this little community of a dozen or so, we're 19 members, about a dozen who show up on Sundays, and most of them don't have computers and don't want computers and don't know anything about computers. So I am not going to do what I knew some of my colleagues were doing, which was switching to Zoom, and those people who just didn't have access would be on the phone. That didn't
Right.
feel right to me. That was creating two classes of people in the room, those who could see what was
Yeah.
going on and those who could not.
Yeah.
I refused to do that, and I just went into prayer about it. I said, "Okay, well, what are the other options?" Not even thinking about what it could be, and then Spirit just leads the way in everything. Absolutely does. And out of that pop, well, you have this old freeconferencecall.com account because when you were in training at Holmes Institute and a lot of your classes were done through the phone, because this was before I was a part of it, before a lot of the streaming stuff was easy to do, you would be on the phone with your teachers and with your other colleagues in your schooling, and you still have that account out there. Why don't you use that? It's like, what? I answered everything. We just answered the whole thing. And so we started on the 15th of March, 2020 to meet on the phone, and we are still meeting on the phone to this day.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And I'm putting the phone number up here for anybody that is watching right now and would like to join your community on a Sunday. I think I will.
Bearing in mind the
I would.
time difference, you do.
There's a time difference. Yeah, there is a time difference. So, what is it about, Reverend Molly? What is it about prayer? What do you really believe that prayer? What is it about prayer that is as the basis of our lives, is the catapult for living the most fully expressed life that we can?
It's a great follow-up question because you could put it this way: it is the free conference call to Spirit always there. I mean, it's a line that's always open. There's
Yeah,
never a busy signal, and you can
right.
drop in on those calls anytime that you allow yourself to do so. So what I love teaching, among the many principles of New Thought, is this idea that we have this connection within us all the time. So use it. And sometimes I'll joke with people, say that actually God is the best social secretary I could imagine. I never forget an appointment. If I rely on this particular social secretary, all is well. That is absolutely true. Just like this idea coming through to reactivate this old account I had, free conference call folks, and how flawlessly it operates. I mean, they also have a video conferencing service, but that wouldn't serve us to do that because, again, so many of our folks just don't have or want to do the computer thing. They're in their 80s primarily, maybe that's the reason, but whatever their reasoning, they do
Yeah.
have phones and the phones work fine. So that's been a thing to learn, that it answers to every question. And of course, the answer is always love, anyway, to every question.
Yes.
But that's always inside us when we know how to just drop in and listen, make that connection. It works.
So why, if we know that, we don't all consciously know this though, do we? It's like, I was just wondering then, what stops us? Even when we know that prayer is the way, what stops us from fully embracing that and embodying that as a way of life?
It's a great question. I think for many people, uh, I would make a little division between those who understand how we use the term prayer in New Thought and
Yes.
others. For folks not in our community, and maybe for some who are, there's this old idea that prayer is begging, beseeching, or placating an angry, externalized big daddy in the sky who seems to have an in for us more than caring about us. I have to say that's why it never really drew my interest, all of that old way of looking at the divine. But even for folks in our community, I think because so many of us have been raised in that external deity concept and the punishment mentality that went with it for some,
Hmm.
there's a long built-in reluctance to use prayer, or maybe they don't understand what it is. It was one woman that came to our community a number of years ago, and she was excited about ultimately becoming a minister. And so I started working with her in that way. And she came to me one day and said, I don't know who it is I'm praying to. Because her old mind was, I have to be praying to some
Yeah.
external deity. And I said, you're not praying to, you're praying as.
Hmm.
And this, of course, is the big shift. And I think even for folks within New Thought, it can be hard to remember that because the old way is so ingrained. And so
Yes.
this, I think, is one of the best things we can do, is to refresh people's idea of what prayer really is, which is talking to the the universal core of yourself that's individualized through you, but it is not just you. It is the universe and beyond, and you have access to all of that. It's a really exciting idea when you can understand you're not praying to something outside of yourself. It's outside, it's inside, it's all places at once, and it's infinitely knowing. So that is part of who we are. This is the exciting message. That's us.
Yes. So it's this surrendering of the identity as our personality and allowing the prayer to flow through us because we are the prayer. It is
Yeah.
us and as us. And without having to even do anything or make anything happen. For me, that's the exciting part. It's like this complete, okay, I can surrender and let the prayer come through.
Yes. Yes. I don't know if they have this toy ever in the UK, but there was I'm 74, so some of what I know is people in the US don't know anymore either. But there was this toy for a while called the 8 ball, the cosmic 8 ball, or whatever it was called. And it was you shook the thing, and it's the color of a 8 ball on a pool table or billiards table, but it had this window in it where a little message would come up to sort of answer your query, like a Ouija board, if you will. But this was this thing called the 8 ball. And that's the way I think of the divine. It's my inner 8 ball. It answers all my questions, and it's never wrong, though that thing was quite often wrong. But this
Well, sometimes we think it's wrong and it's not. We just don't want to hear it.
you're right. That's true enough. To be able to listen to the message is the next step, probably.
Yes.
Yep. Yep. It's
So I'm going to just say hello and welcome to Diego. Great to be with you here, Diego. Diego is our our number one producer here on New Thought Media Network. It's great to be here with you, Diego. I haven't connected for a while. And Prince, welcome, Prince. You're in the house. Good to be here with you, Reverend Prince, and Fiona in Switzerland, Geneva. Welcome to the Cosmic Prayer today. We are joined by the wonderful Reverend Molly Cate, who is the Senior Minister of Unity at the Redwoods. In the Redwoods? Do
oh,
you hug of? Get it right, Laura.
I'll hug a tree anytime. Absolutely.
Yes.
The redwoods are so beautiful here. They truly are. And
Oh,
they used to live all over the planet. Back when it was a hot place full of dinosaurs, the redwoods were all over the whole earth. Now there's just this little snippet of the western United States where they still hang on, and I'm so grateful to live with them. They are extraordinary teachers of patience.
definitely. Definitely. We have a few here and around my area, and
Oh, cool.
when I find one, I'm kind of suctioned to it for about an hour.
They get huge, they get really, really
Huge.
big. Yeah. So it's really wonderful to be with you again, Laura. Thank you so much.
It's amazing. I'm really. We're going to talk about this this fresh expressions. And before we do that, though, I'm really interested in your idea with how we've had this. We're coming out of, seemingly out of, if we were ever in it. We're coming away from this idea that there was COVID and we were all separated. And we were talking about this before we came on live today, about how powerful a message can be. to keep us in a place of fear. Even now, when we're kind of told that it's okay and we can integrate and be with each other, I was just explaining about how there's this little kind of message that goes off in my mind that says, "Oh my gosh, don't get too close if I'm near somebody in a queue," and how powerful this fear message is, and how can prayer turn this around? These messages of fear that we've decided to indoctrinate ourselves with.
That's a marvelous thought, truly. I mean, it's a weird time now, as you said, to be coming back into a social world a little bit at a time. It's not like there was a cutoff and all of a sudden, yep, all things are normal again. Just go back to who you were. That's not the case because the world itself is still struggling with huge areas where COVID is still a danger to people and they've not gotten the vaccine. The inequities globally are huge. Who's had access to vaccines and who has not, for example. And so it's a are we out of it now? Are we not? I mean, they say the pandemic is over, but not COVID. So there's a difference between those two things. For me, I do a lot of gratitude prayers for the vaccines, to be honest with you. I think that's one of the most extraordinary ways in which spirit has shown up through people during the pandemic, and the ways in which people I know were skeptical of them. What was sad to me, because what I saw happening was the development of technologies that were made for other purposes. The DNA that people can you could actually map the whole DNA of many species quite quickly now. I remember when the Human Genome
Yeah.
Project was first started, and how many years that took to actually map the whole thing. Now it's fairly easy to do. So to be able to map and replicate parts of this virus to very quickly produce a vaccine, because you don't have to grow the darn bug, you don't have to endanger anyone to do that. This is an entirely new way to produce vaccine, and it was a gift to the world, an extraordinary gift. But people didn't trust it because it was coming along too fast, and oh, it takes years to produce a. And I would talk to folks. I have a dear friend who's a chef, and he wouldn't get the vaccine because it was done too fast. And he didn't trust it. And I said, well, look, what they've done is find the recipe for this bug. And they know how to get your body to respond to the recipe so they don't have to give you the live bug. That's one of the reasons it's so fast. And he got it and he started getting the vaccines because I could put it in words
Okay.
he understood because I used the word recipe. So you have to speak to people where they are. And I think with prayer, it's the same thing. If you can get people to understand that there is always a support in them and around them for blossoming forth new things in their lives and beyond, then they get to be a part of something that's so exciting. The development, as with these vaccines in the physical realm, the development of ways that we are sharing the world and the health
Hmm.
and the connections between us for good.
Hmm.
It just, to me, it's a fine example of how good can come out of very difficult circumstances. It's one of the things that the pandemic has shown people.
And it's also allowed us to speak our truth more freely in arenas like this, in situations like this, online, in conversations,
Yes.
having debates, having talks, having philosophical arguments about spirituality. That's more the norm here. I mean, on social media, that's quite a norm now, isn't it, for
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
this to be happening? So it's really unraveled something beautiful,
Yeah.
other than a talk on a Sunday.
It's kind of funny when you think certainly this technology we're using right now was available before 2020, definitely.
Yeah,
And yet folks were doing the old thing. You show up on Sunday morning in person. If you bring in a guest speaker, that person has to travel to where you are to come and do
yeah,
that thing. And
and music.
all musicians, all of it. And now because the pandemic pushed us off of the physical space and into the space of the internet, now we're much happier doing Zoom meetings, and we know the opportunities are everywhere. I mean, I could, if I knew one, I could hire a musician in Thailand to be part of my
Here I am. Oh, in Thailand. Yeah.
They could be from anywhere around the world and be part of this. We can have conversations
Yeah.
truly with people everywhere. And for exciting for me last year, I got to participate from home in the Parliament of World Religions. I would never have been able to do that except it was online. So the
Yes.
opportunities are so much greater with this amazing technology, and we got kind of shoved into using it for more things, and now people are unwilling to go back to the old style as a limitation, but only as a part of their reality. So I just love the way this is developing. I think it's wonderful.
So, do you believe that collectively, our prayer collectively has allowed this paradigm shift
I again,
to happen,
yeah,
even though it's painful and the loss of life and the trauma and other things that have been happening, that have come to the surface that make me angry, make me feel this is unjust, this is unfair, this shouldn't be happening in 2020. You know, do you believe this is a prayer answered?
I think it's several kinds of prayer answered. The prayers that we wish to communicate, yes, definitely, and that we are finding our way to dare to love everyone in the world. More of us are challenged to do that because everyone's accessible. It's
Yeah,
also answered prayer in a more challenging way, in that many people, because we understand that prayer is not just the things you intentionally mean to do as a prayer. Prayer is anything that you are putting out strongly from your emotion driven mind. And so if you are putting out in your from your mind a fear message, that's your prayer.
right.
So in both senses, I mean, they're both happening simultaneously.
Yes,
Aren't we watching that? That's simply amazing.
yes,
As more people get that they can be part of the shift, then they're using their prayer for that common good. At the same time, millions and millions of people don't know they're using their prayer to produce more fear and mayhem and the horrible amounts of death we saw. I mean, it's in the United States that there's like, I think that we're the second largest death numbers for COVID, and that's appalling for a supposedly developed nation. And that's because
yeah,
people were being driven by fear and taught fear messages, and the appalling timing of COVID coming along during the last year in which that reprehensible person was the president of the United States here and has been teaching fear and hatred and a semi-fascist message that's now really taken over part of the political world in the United States. It is part of the creation of the negative, and you can see it how easy it is to do that if you don't know that you're using prayer to do that.
right,
And so,
right. Because it's our predominant feelings and emotions that are creating our experience, or
yep,
that are allowing our experience to unfold as that.
yep,
So if those feelings and emotions are fear, over 50% of our day
yep,
driven by fear, that's what our life is going to look like. That's what our world is going to look like individually. And
yep,
on a collective level, that's what it's going to look like.
yep,
So how important is prayer then, and teaching prayer, and I'm really interested how this links in with fresh expression, actually, because for me, that when you just told me about that before the show, before we came on, it feels amazing. Would you like to explain this this whole idea and how prayer is being
I'd be happy.
given as an opportunity in this way around the world now? Well, not around the world, in the UK and America. I have to, yeah,
In Canada, they're doing it some in Canada as
and
well.
Canada. Okay.
I have to say, I've been thinking more about prayer this past 2.5 years than I did before. And that's because of what we're talking about here, that people are always and always have been creating from whatever their base beliefs are, the the thoughts, and as you put it, that the energy of it, the emotions they put behind it, the fire of their thought is their emotional component of it. And so people have always been creating from that, but people haven't known they are necessarily. And so to be a part of this wonderful teaching, it seems to me more and more important than ever to get the word out that prayer isn't just something you do before you go to sleep at night, or over a meal, or in any particular ritualized way. Those are all wonderful. But to notice what you're doing when you're just using your mind in your everyday life, what prayers are you putting forward when you're just in the world? That, I think, is the key to the gift that we have within the various branches of the New Thought movement to convey to people. This is our opportunity to get that message to more people, that they are creating their lived experience from what they are thinking. This is
Yeah,
incredibly powerful. And that's not how people understand prayer if they're raised in a more traditional setting. And so I think we have
not at
a lot
all.
to teach people.
A lot.
Now, where
Can
that,
I just can
go
I
ahead.
just interject there for a moment, because we do have this phrase in Science of Mind and Spirit. It's on the back of one of the books, or on one of the textbook, I think. Change your thinking, change your
For sure.
life.
Yeah.
And I think that can be a bit of a stereotype uh, sentence or idea, because there is a little more involved than just changing our thinking, isn't there?
Yes, it's a good catchphrase, and I think
It's a catchphrase. That's it.
Ernestine should be definitely given the credit for having come up with that wonderful phrase. But like any catchphrase, it can be misinterpreted, and I think that happens to us in the in the world all the time. And it's, I mean, we get called Pollyannas, and we don't look at anything negative, and that's absolutely not true. And I'm constantly reminding my little congregation that no, we are looking directly at the things in our lives that we consider negative, because we want to know where they come from. We want to love ourselves past them, through them, and out the other side. And so all of these are opportunities to grow. It's never about not noticing what's going on. And it's never about blaming other people. It's about taking responsibility. To me, this teaching takes responsibility, asks people to take responsibility for their lives in ways I had never seen before in any
Yeah,
faith community I'd ever been connected to. I was in
definitely.
awe of that.
Yeah, and
And
me.
is not understood well. And so change your thinking, change your life is an important phrase, but it needs to be unpacked and not just ridiculed as the media will do to our way of thinking. And they're always trying to talk about us as dumbing down reality, and that's not at all what we're doing. Not even close.
Not. I mean, it's the other way.
Yep, it is.
Yeah,
So the opportunity in coming to help people see that prayer is something they're always doing, or quite often doing, and then to notice how what they're praying for, and they often are praying for things they don't want because that's
yeah,
what they're believing in. That is an incredibly powerful message as well. And you asked before how that links to fresh expressions. Should I bring that in as
yes.
well?
Please do. I'm going to add them here to the stream.
It's interesting because it's not at all a part of those who have started fresh expressions. It began in the UK. And I think over there, you'd look it up by typing in Fresh Expressions UK, and you'd come up with folks
Yeah,
doing that. It's from very traditional denominations, actually. And in the United States, they tend to be more evangelical side of life. Can't talk about how that is in the UK, but in the US, they tend to be kind of more, I'd say maybe straight laced, Christian focused. they're not interfaith focused well at all. I look forward to the day when they get that they can be, there it is. Thank you for putting it up for your folks there in the UK. There's a
Yeah.
Rush Expressions US as well, and I look forward to them developing past speaking just to each other. For those of us in the New Thought movement, to work with their materials means, as we do anyway, translating out of their understanding of everything being driven by this God called Jesus, into an understanding that we're the divine, the way we would need to translate it. But past that, the message is absolutely wonderful, which is there's been a shift demographically and culturally in both our societies, and people haven't the time or are no longer committed to coming to a building on a Sunday morning to go to a service and then go home again and get on with their lives. This is not working anymore. People aren't coming, and they're noticing in both of our societies that there's this dwindling happening of the folks who show up on Sunday morning. This is true of the Roman Catholic Church in the United States, as I imagine it's true of other parts of the world, but I've definitely seen it here where they're actually selling off church properties because they can't afford to keep them open anymore. It's true of the Methodist communities here in the US, and the Methodists were some of the folks who started this in the UK. So they started saying, well, what's wrong with this picture? What is God trying to tell us that this isn't working anymore? If do we want our spiritual lives to just dwindle into nothing? And the answer, of course, there was no. And from their point of view, they had a really good teacher of how not to do that, because as they're careful to say and wise to say, Jesus of Nazareth didn't have a building he asked people to come to. He
Yeah.
went to them.
Yeah.
And that, of course, is the message of Fresh Expressions. If you think in terms of a traditional Christian message, it gets you there right away. No, go to them. Don't ask them to come to you. So this is really interesting, the way it's developing. We're working with it. Unity Worldwide Ministries is working with this. I thank them so much. Just a little background. I was trained in ministry in religious science. That is my background. When I came to Eureka, though, I found the community that was looking for a spiritual leader was Unity, and they're the oldest branch of New Thought. Part of what Ernest Holmes learned from was the teachers, the Fillmores, who founded Unity. So we're very connected. There's really no difference between the two, except that Unity's the older sibling and has a little more of a Christianized or Bible focused background than religious science does. Nonetheless, the teaching is identical, that how prayer operates in us, through us, as us, and change your thinking, change your life. Those are the foundational ideas. So what we're doing in Unity, and I'm really crediting the Worldwide Ministries folks for noticing this movement in the UK called Fresh Expressions and saying we can be a part of that too. We're just going to translate the languaging they use. And there's this lovely little book. I'll give them a plug for it. It's a really wonderful introduction to it. It's called Deep Roots, Wild Branches. A little tiny paperback book that lays out the fact that these demographic shifts have happened and people just want their Sundays or need them desperately for taking care of their kids or going on a outing or getting the chores done. They don't have the time anymore to go somewhere and give up their Sunday morning. So bringing it to them, and it's so exciting to read what they're doing. And when you get involved in their emails and stuff, you can read about all the places they're establishing missions, if you will, little conversational places, a dog park where people come in with their critters and the
Yeah.
dogs go off and play and everybody sits and they'll maybe bring in a quote from Ernest Holmes, it could be, for anybody, then say, well, let's talk about this quote in terms of our spiritual lives. And so it becomes a much more egalitarian arrangement, and it takes on so many forms in different places. There are these little groups coming together in tattoo parlors, in bars, in the UK, pubs. That'd be perfect in a pub because you bring the kids in. So
Perfect.
pub would be perfect for this. Maybe they're doing it in the UK. Um, um, all kinds of dance studios, dog parks, wherever people are and they want to have a conversation with each other, you can create one of these. And the way it showed up for our community that I'm so excited about, I want to mention next. And that is, got involved in this group. Unity Worldwide has started for those of us to learn more about this. We're working our way through that little book I mentioned. And once I'd gotten into it by 2 or 3 chapters, I got excited about trying to do something with it. And of course, at the same time, it became fall and coming into September in Unity, you come to something called the World Day of Prayer, which is something Unity does every year. And it's always early part of September. And I knew that was coming up. And I thought, I want to do something with this new set of ideas around that. And here in Eureka, we're right on the west coast, the Pacific Ocean, and Humboldt Bay is the place where Eureka is what it's most known for, except for the redwoods themselves. And across from the town of Eureka, there's this island where most of the fishing fleet have their berths, and there's this little lighthouse there, tiny, tiny lighthouse. And I said, on World Day of Prayer, we're going to go meet at the lighthouse outside. We're going to have signs that say Unity of the Redwoods. We're going to have signs that say, come pray with us. And we're just going to sit there for a couple of hours and offer people prayer. And that's what we did. And that was our first Fresh Expression. And I'm so excited we got to do that in September.
Oh my word.
Now,
And so has that inspired you to take it further, to do this,
it's inspired
yeah,
me to ask the community to take it further.
yeah.
So this is community prayer in a way, asking them to keep this new idea that we are going out into the world now that it's safer to do so, that we have ways to share what we know and who we are that will come through if we ask that inner knower within us to answer the question. So that's what I've been asking folks to do, and we're working with that. And September was just a few weeks ago, and so I'm opening that idea. Where do we take this next?
It's such a shift, and yet it isn't. It feels like we shifted backwards and we're shifting forwards. We're now being given the opportunity to come out of the building and
Yes.
on screen, and now we're being given a new insight to come out into the world and
Yes.
not have to be contained by any screen or any walls whatsoever,
That's
just to
right.
show up, and wherever we show up is the sacred.
Yeah.
Wherever we show up is holy ground.
That's so beautifully put. Thank you, Laura, because that's been one of the fundamental ideas for me my whole life, that everything is sacred, every place is sacred, every life form
Yes.
is sacred. And how do we live that? And so there are more ways to do so. And I think also it can be done in community. I'm a part of the, as you mentioned, when you mentioned stuff about my bio, part of the interfaith community here. So I just love the idea of doing this with other faith communities also. So this is a way in which we can celebrate beyond our own understanding of the divine, but all people's understandings are part of, I think of it as like a great gemstone, like
Yes.
maybe knowing what spirit is. Each community of faith has a facet. They're seeing a facet of this great gem, but the whole gem is bigger than any of us can see. And
Any of it.
I need the viewpoints of my Muslim friends and my Jewish
Yes.
friends and my
Yes.
Sikh friends and my Sufi friends. I need them all, my Buddhist friends. I need them all to tell me how they see this divine thing, because they're bringing me more of the facets of it and I can see more of it through their hearts. Is absolutely essential to do. And this is one of the beauties. I haven't seen this in Fresh Expressions yet, because it's mostly focused within their own communities. How do you get more Methodists involved, for example, in the UK and the United States? But what I'm seeing is this: how do we bring this to a wider interfaith audience so that we are
Yes.
truly students
One.
of the universe together?
Yes.
So to me, this is a divine idea that's being planted through the shock of the pandemic. It's part of the good that's come out of that, if you will. It's amazing to watch that happen.
It just feels to me as if I know there's this whole new paradigm that we're experiencing, and maybe somehow we felt this new paradigm was online, and that was just the interim. And even that online paradigm has to evolve
Yep.
into something new,
Yep.
something where we're not scared and fearful to be with each other again and to be hugging each other
Yep.
and to be hugging each other as one, not because we are part of one belief system, because we're part of the one and we are the one and we're all embracing each other for who we are. So I feel very excited by this. I'm going to be looking up the UK branch of this and seeing how this can evolve here in the UK from an interfaith perspective.
Yes, I think that's the next step for these folks to embrace, and I'm excited by it. So, Fresh Expressions, one of their founders is the one who wrote the book Deep Roots, Wild Branches, and Unity Worldwide has picked up on that. But we are not the intended audience for them, because everything they write is very much like, well, we all know how this works because we are traditional Christians. That they would put it quite that way, but so any of us who are part of the New Thought movement, particularly if in our training as ministers, I don't know, for you, I had the opportunity to visit a dozen different faith communities and do reports
Definitely.
when I was in training. I loved
Yeah.
doing that. And
Loved it.
it's so fun to do. And
It
part
was amazing.
it's amazing, and it's also always a translation where I have to sort of filter out their buzzwords and their understanding of how it operates and get to the core that's underneath that we both agree on. This was the great
Hmm.
training of that, to be able to whittle away the surface stuff and certainly honor that that's their stuff and not demean it at all, but to know that beneath that we share an understanding that this universe is an extraordinary expression of divine energy, and that we can
Yes.
work together because we know that. So
Yes.
this is, I think, where the folks doing Fresh Expressions, both in the Americas and in UK, can really grow what they're bringing forth, and I look forward to seeing that. So maybe if some of them who are part of it are listening to this, they hear this, they're going to say, "Oh yeah, I don't know, maybe we're starting something new here this morning, Laura." I don't know, but I'm really glad to.
Well, you know what? It's all a prayer unfolding, and maybe they don't know it consciously, and yet on a subconscious level, they're planting a seed for unity here and
Yeah, yes,
for connection and oneness.
yes,
And over here we don't have the mega churches. That
right.
isn't a thing over here in the UK. So, it just feels so beautiful that we can bring spiritual practice to people wherever they are and not have to force people to go somewhere to realize it, because it's already here within us, right
Exactly.
where we are, wherever we are.
Yeah, this is right up our alley, isn't it? This new
Yeah.
yeah. So, because we know we don't need anything but a certain moment to be able to sit down and go within. That's all we
Totally.
need.
Totally.
Yep. And so we get to
Oh,
this prayer. This is a prayer
I'm
of
excited.
the divine mind to us, which is like open up, open up, open. I mean, to me, that's always the prayer coming in, if you will, from the universal, all knowing, whatever you want to call it. I prefer the term infinite creative presence. I don't use the word God a lot because there are so many different meanings for that depending on who the person is. So
Yes.
for me, infinite creative presence really covers a lot of this. And that creativity is what I'm seeing happening now.
Yes.
That's what this is, this explosion that can happen as we all come together to use the ideas that Fresh Expressions is bringing forth, thinking for their own people, into a much wider,
And widening it.
way widening it. Yeah.
What a cosmic prayer this is. Oh, I'm
Woo!
so excited. Oh, I can feel it
In
here.
fact,
Even Malcolm's moving behind you.
the interfaith part of us wants to hear more about it too. So I'm going to do a presentation for them in a couple of months on what this is. And so And that's the first thing that we have a meeting once a month. And some of the folks in there said, well, it would be nice if they were a little more interfaith in their languaging. It's like, yeah, wouldn't it though? Oh, goody, you mentioned that, because that's taken my heart and mind totally in that new direction too. And so I think it's always, as you say, spirit in action. And we're just seeing, we're being led,
Drawn.
fed,
Yeah.
on to this whole new way, because we're coming out of a pandemic when everything was shut down, and we're cautious, and yet we're excited at the same time to build new things out of that. So it's
Oh,
perfect timing.
perfect. I can just see it. Cosmic prayer in the local park.
Yeah,
Cosmic prayer in the, yes. Cosmic prayer on the beach. Cosmic prayer with the redwoods.
yep. I just want to go around and ask people, what does prayer mean to you, and what does
Yeah.
prayer mean to our community, and where can we mix that together to enrich both our lives?
And to find that, as you said, that common place where there's an agreement in our hearts
Yep. Yep.
that it is love ultimately, and connecting with the connection that we are as love.
Yes.
That's what it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Allowing that love to be through our lives.
Yes. With
Yes.
with my teaching, spiritual teaching, when people have any question about what is their direction, I always will say the answer to every question is love.
Yeah.
Every question. There's not a single question you can ask that isn't, the answer isn't love. And so
Hmm.
this is a really big teaching done in a very little sentence, But I think it's a way forward for people to understand how that operates, and how love can show up in so many different forms, and that we
Yes.
can embrace new ideas through love as well as ones we've known for a long time. There's no limit to it.
Yes. No.
That's the
And
beauty.
so that's the letting go of this idea that we are limited
Yeah,
in our nature. We're
yeah,
not. We're
yeah,
unlimited expressions,
yeah,
and we show up as limited. And it's just letting go of that fear,
yeah, yeah.
letting go of that fear. Oh, Reverend Molly, I'm so this time has just whizzed by, and I could be here with you for like another 3 hours, but I can't because there's a program coming on in a minute. So for those of you that have been watching and here and part of this conversation and embraced in the field of this unraveling of prayer, prayer answered for our teachings to be out in the world and not confined to a screen or to a building, and that wherever we are, we can emulate this love and draw people towards us who feel it too and get excited about that and have the conversation, have deeper conversations. And thank you so much for being here, Reverend Molly,
You're
for
welcome.
sharing today. Thank you
I'm
so much.
getting this wonderful image now of the dandelion puff where you blow on it and the seeds go everywhere. That's what we're doing here this morning. Is
Totally. And look at what's behind you there on the purple, that kind of
yes,
starlight.
I love that.
Yes, it's that.
Sparkle. Yep, that's
So,
beautiful.
Reverend Molly, I'm just going to put this up here again. There's your phone conference, free conference call for your Sunday meetings, your Sunday talks, which are on the phone for anybody that wants to tune in. There's the number.
11 a.m. Pacific Coast time in the USA.
Fantastic. And you can reach out to Reverend Molly at Unity of the
Actually,
Redwoods.
it'd be best to use my own email, which I haven't given you, I don't think, because
Let me have that now and I can put it up here.
that is, it's easy to say, awestruckliving@gmail.com. That's all lowercase, all run together. AWESTRUCKLIVING. It's a long one, but I just love it. It's how I live. Awestruckliving@gmail.com. That's my email. People are welcome to read.
Perfect. So you can reach out to Reverend Molly to know more about Unity of the Redwoods and about her private counselling and prayer practitioner work. If there's anything, just
Yes.
there's her awestruck living from an awestruck Reverend Molly.
So many people have said to me, I love your email address. That's why I chose it. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's great. And
Thank you.
thank you for being here
Oh,
today, and for everyone that's watched and listened. And we look forward to you coming back next Valentine's Day.
we could make
Yes,
an annual event out of it if
we
you like.
can. Let's see how we progress here with with
See
prayer,
what comes.
seeding prayer around the world.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Laura, for the work you do. And this is such an opportunity for people to really come together and know from so many different guests that you have how we
Yeah.
can be a community of great hearted growth. It's just wonderful what you do. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, it's a blessing. And would you share a prayer now, Reverend Molly,
Yes.
for the cosmic prayer?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Well, we'll start the unity way, which is always with breathing. So if you would I invite people to just stop where they are and rest in the breath, not forcing it, not making it do anything in particular, just being that flow like a gentle moment at the seashore, that wafting in and out that is your breath, the inspiration of your being. And from that acknowledgement of the sacredness of the breath, I simply know that there is the one infinite creative presence that lives as the universe and so much more, and also lives gently and intimately inside every human heart and mind. I celebrate that today here with Rev.Laura, this knowing that we are part of an infinite perspective, a creative perspective on human life itself. And there is so much more we can grow into as we are willing to simply say yes. Yes to this divine presence leading the way. Yes to the knowing that all of humanity deserves opportunities to grow and learn and share and be inspired from each other as we are willing to offer dignity to all persons, to all cultures, to all religions. We are part of a human family, understanding more about the magnificence of the divine showing up as each one of us. Infinite expressions, and now fresh expressions too. I'm grateful for that new term and new organization moving us forward. And I simply release with joy this prayer, knowing it is fulfilling itself moment by moment and word by word, including in this moment, this hour with Laura here. Blessings to all. I release this prayer with your help as we say together, and so it is. Yes. Mm. Such a joy to be with you today.
Muted. Thank you, Reverend Molly, for being here. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
And thank you for everybody that's joined us. This is New Thought Media Network, and we are a global focus ministry doing this work every single day, bringing out broadcasts for you to know the truth of who you are as love. That's what we do here on the network every day. All sorts of programs, broadcasts, shows, music, entertainment, education, and ultimately these dynamic New Thought ancient teachings that reach us in our hearts. So I'm going to put the website up here. You can have a look at New Thought Media Network. And of course, you're welcome to donate into the vision and the mission of this mighty network. Until next time, love and blessings to everybody. Thank you, Reverend Molly.
Thank you for the opportunity, Laura. Blessings to you. Bye.